Hello again, my name is Wesley Lewis. I am going to respond to Jeremy's response to my initial video. I really didn't want to continue on with the Jack and Jeremy and Harvest Capital stuff. I thought I was pretty much done. I do have another victim that's come forward that has emailed me through the email address that I've included. And I've talked to them extensively. They've shared their story. So I do want to share their story. All the other stuff I wasn't going to get into again, but I do need to respond to this video. I watched it, finally watched the whole thing just a few days ago. I feel like the Lord wants me to respond to it. But I've also been advised by many people that I should respond to it. So I'm going to go through it piece by piece. Unfortunately, within it, I've identified 29, at least 29 deceptive statements. Some of them are omission of information. Some of them are kind of like not giving the correct or the information in an accurate way. And some of it is just completely false statements. So I'm going to go through his video. I'm going to present the information from the new victim as well as some different evidence to display where there are different deceptions in his video. I'll do the best that I can to make this not a super long video. I'll try, but there's a lot of information here. Okay, so here's the first deceptive statement I'm going to play for you.
That she found child pornography on her laptop at Bowles Ministries. And she refused to let anybody know about it. She said that she made a phone call and reported it, but she didn't tell me as her manager or Sean or Cherie or accounting or HR. She held it to herself. This is a person who's got a kids ministry.
Okay, so this is deceptive. It's also an attempt at manipulation. Honestly, that's what's happening here. But regardless, again, he calls it my laptop. That's a deceptive statement. This is the laptop that he handed to me in the Bowles Ministries office one day in late 2019. Initially, I think it was late 2019. Initially, I was using my own device when I came on. And then he gives me this laptop. I have no idea who the laptop was. I don't know who was using the laptop prior. I have no idea. But I started using that laptop for Bowles Ministry stuff. It was living in the office. It was not something I was taking home with me. I was not using this for any personal anything or any other ministry outside of Bowles. It was the Bowles Ministry laptop. And it had been there the night prior, and it stayed there when I left. And eventually we did take these devices with us in 2020 during the shutdown. But again, this disgusting video that popped up happened prior to that. And it was the only time anything ever popped up like that. I did search the whole device extensively in the trash can and every single thing I could search on the computer. And this video was not on the computer. It appeared to have popped up in some kind of a foreign web browser, which it was really bizarre. And he's also stating that I didn't tell anybody. He mentions how I reported it, but then he's like, she didn't tell anybody. So I did report it, and I have people that were in the room with me when this video popped up. There were 2 coworkers I confirmed with me in the room. There was one other coworker in the adjacent room with the door open that recalls hearing me. And I was screaming. I mean, I was completely freaking out after this happened. I was not okay. So I did call it in. They asked me some questions. I gave them information. Let them know that the stuff itself was not on the device. Obviously, if I had located the video on the device, I would have had a much different approach. He also states that I didn't tell him. I don't believe that. He came into the foyer very shortly after this happened. I was pacing the foyer. I was completely freaking out. And I don't know on what planet I wouldn't have told him. I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember pacing the foyer talking to him and that I was freaking out. So I'm not going to try to quote exactly what was said because I don't recall the exact words. But this is not something I would have withheld from him, obviously. That would have been ridiculous. And it's definitely not my personality to withhold such information. So he says I didn't tell Sean and Cherie. I don't recall. If I didn't, it was because we had been trained to tell him everything, and it was going to go through him. We weren't meant to go to Sean and Cherie. He wanted to be the one to vet all the important information and then present it to Sean and Cherie. That's how we had been trained. And I have many witnesses that can attest to that. That's how things were run there. Jeremy was the chief operating officer, and he was the one that you went to if there were concerns.
Like I was the buffer for the ministry. Like I stood in the middle of any feedback that came to the ministry for Sean. I buffered, correspondence and problems. I dealt with that stuff, and if it was an issue, I'd raise it. But if not, I would just deal with it myself, including the employees. So I often became the villain in that sense, and I was okay with that. That was my job to be the buffer.
He also says I didn't go to HR or the, IT. I think he says IT. We didn't have that. We didn't have IT. And as far as I know, we didn't have HR. He also says I didn't tell the accounting department. I don't know why you would tell the accounting department. That doesn't make any sense. So, he's trying to frame this in a way where it's obviously deceptive, and it's meant to be it's meant to try to incriminate me in some way. So there's the first statement. Let's go on to the next one.
Very concerning. Second thing, at the end of Wesley's 2-hour video, she's leading up to this crescendo of how evil and, how questionable I am, whatever, all these red flags, she started to see all the red flags. She mentions that there was a case, which she doesn't give the timing to, potentially an accusation of a case being at expression with child sexual assault or child on child assault or child on child sexual abuse. Not sure exactly her phrase.
The allegation itself is that there was ongoing, for a period of time, child on child sexual assault involving multiple victims, and it occurred inside of the Expression 58 building and in multiple different residences of community members of Expression 58. Jen Toledo was made aware of them. And there was a meeting with parents and with children. And allegedly, Jen Toledo, who was the pastor of Expression 58 with her husband, Hona, told these children and parents, we're not going to speak about this outside of this group of us.
How long have you known about this, Wesley? Have you been sitting on this for years? That's a crime, Wesley. That's absolutely terrible that you know about this and not do anything. You called the police right away, Wesley. Wesley is a ordained reporter. She's an ordained minister, and she's a required mandated reporter. If you hear or see of any crime in this magnitude, you call the police right away so they can investigate it.
So let's look at what I say regarding my knowledge of this information, and so if I knew or not. I'm going to share my personal timeline of events, as well as information that I have gathered that will be important for the church to know. I was not aware of these horrific allegations that have come forward when I was working for all of these people. Had I been aware that these things were happening, obviously I would not have been working there. Okay, so that's my first statement regarding this. I'm going to play another one for you because there are a couple that would make it clear that I didn't have this information prior. I was not aware of anything during the time that I was there. And had I been, I would certainly have called the police. All right. So that's after my statement regarding the child on child sexual assault allegations that I have witnesses for. These witnesses came to me in February of this year. So, and I like I said, I was not expecting to find such allegations. They came up in conversations when I was essentially trying to find out the timeline of when Jen and Hona knew about the Sean stuff. So when I was looking for that, I found other things I was not expecting to find. For the sake of clarification, so that people understand how child abuse reporting works, in California, I can't speak to all the other states, okay? But in California, you are mandated to report child abuse or a suspicion of child abuse if you are employed working with children. So you are mandated to the children that you are working with. Now, there are other fields where you're mandated to all children. For example, when I was a foster parent, I was mandated to all children. So any child that I came in contact with that I believe was being abused, I needed to report for. But typically the way that it works is that you are mandated for the children that you are employed working with, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's other agencies, like I would imagine that perhaps law enforcement is required to report for everybody. Perhaps social workers are probably required to report for all children. I'm not sure. So the information that I've already reported, that I've already gone to the police with prior to the making of my first video, I'm actually not mandated to report that, but obviously I've reported it, right? Because why would I not report that? It needs to be reported. Now, I have no control over getting witnesses to actually speak to the police, but I have directed all of the witnesses to the police, and I have encouraged them strongly to report what they know. And then there is other information that I know that I have not shared publicly, and that has also all been reported to the police prior to the making of my video. Now, when Jeremy came out with this video, I actually responded to him in the comments and told him that it's been reported to the police. And then he immediately deleted that comment within like 60 seconds. It was immediately gone. So obviously he saw it. We'll talk about that more later. But clearly these statements he's making are deceptive. They're meant to be deceptive. They're meant to make somebody think that I already knew while I was working expression or at some point, a while ago, and I was keeping it all in. So that is not the case. And I thought I made that pretty clear in my video, but for the sake of clarification, I was not aware of these things. Now, the thing also too is if these things were disclosed to Jen, it would be expected that she would be reporting them. Usually it's the reporting party the party that's disclosed to would typically be the reporting party in mandated reporter laws. Now you can allocate a different mandated reporter to report, but usually you would call it in yourself if it's something that you're aware of. In California, also with new laws, volunteers are mandated. All of the volunteers that I currently manage, I encourage them or offer, if there's any concerns, they can just, I'm happy to take that on. Most people don't enjoy. It's not fun. I've had to call over the years, many. I've had to make many mandated reports over the years, and it's not fun. But it's necessary. And if there was ever a question, this is in terms of whether or not Wesley reports child abuse, when you report as a mandated reporter, you do have to give your name and your information. So if there was ever a question about whether or not Wesley reports child abuse, we would be able to, there would be many referral numbers that we could check on. We would be able to prove that Wesley does in fact report child abuse. Now, all of that being said, maybe there's people out there that know stuff and they don't want to talk to me directly. You don't need to talk to me directly. You can call the Glendale Police Department and you can reference my name and you can reference my video because they have my video. I sent it to them. They also have all of my information. So you could reference all of that and they would be happy to talk to you. They would transfer you to the right detective. Okay, let's look at the next statement. And then I do have some clarifying points to make because I had questions as well from others that I want to clarify.
Video and accused me and alluded to me potentially hiding these crimes. Like somehow I'm involved, When I was at Expression, I worked at the coffee shop I ran the coffee shop and I sold some books in the coffee shop for a couple months. I don't know about any crimes that took place at Expression. I don't know about any child assaults that took place at Expression. But Wesley decided to make a video in response to my victim's story 6 years after I was abused to accuse me of hiding a child sexual assault at Expression 58 that allegedly happened. Wesley, have you been sitting on this for years, knowing about this?
Okay, so again, he's doing this thing again. This is another deceptive statement because he knows that I didn't know about it. you saw my original video. So there's that. Now, there's a video clip I share in my video where he talks about little ones. I'm going to play it again. So I do pose the question in my video, like, why is he bringing up children? Because that video, it's a very bizarre video. It's a very extremely he's very angry in that video, and he's cursing Jen and Hona and Cherie and Sean and calling them out, and it's very bizarre. So he references little ones in that video, and that video came out 2 days before my video. And so all of a sudden, we have a reference to what I believe is children. And then he also, there's another clip I'm going to show you where he says, he talks about mistreating children as well. So for clarification's sake, Jeremy was not in the meeting with Jen and the children and the parents. And I know he was not in that meeting because everybody, the witnesses I have named every single person in that meeting, and Jeremy was not named. There's also, he's correct there. He would not have been in that meeting. He was the bookstore coffee guy. So that's accurate. Now there are other things, several other things that I have been made aware of regarding children, like I said in my other video, that cannot be shared publicly. So when he is referencing little ones and mistreating children, yeah, I have questions. I have questions. I want to know what that means. I want to know what he knows, because he knew that Sean was a pervert the whole time. I didn't tell anybody that. And now he's referencing children. So I have questions, and I think these questions are valid. So I'm going to pull up these 2 clips from this video. I think it's his, like, the church cannot have peace right now video. You should really go and watch that video. I'm shocked that video is still on the internet. A lot of us are shocked that video is still on the internet, but it's up there. So you should go check it out. So here are the clips.
An abuser, those that took advantage of their spouse, those that mistreated their kids.
All right. So there's that. I mean, in this video is the way this video is framed. I mean, he's addressing primarily the main names he's using throughout the entire video are Sean, Cherie, Jen, and Hona. So what does that mean? Mistreating their kids. I have questions about what that means. I'm going to show you the next clip. This is the one that I put in my video. And he's referencing scripture in this clip. It's Matthew 18, Luke 17, and Mark 9 that he's referencing.
Holy crap. We've been playing a nicety nice. There's no fear. Where's the fear of God? You know, when a leader and a pastor takes a position of power and authority over a congregation, they should feel the full weight and fear of God every time they speak to somebody. Their heart and their chest and their face should burn with the fear of God. Do not harm this little one. It's better for you to wrap 100-pound stone around your neck and throw it off the edge of a cliff. That's better for you than to mistreat a little one. God's serious about this stuff. People are like, oh my gosh, I just want it to be back to normal. I want things to be back to normal. No, he's purifying the church.
Okay, so I played a little bit more of it just so you can get the context of it. But he's specifically talking to throughout the whole video, Sean, Cherie, Jen, and Hona. He's referencing little ones. It's better for a millstone to be tied around your neck and thrown into the deepest sea than to harm one of these little ones. And again, like I said in my original video, it's when you look at this scripture, little ones doesn't automatically mean children, but it is my belief based on the tone of the video that that's what he means. That's my belief. So I have formed a belief based on statements that he's made in his own video. Okay, we're going to look at the next clip.
Where Wesley is, I'm going to call the police and I'm going to have her investigated for harboring these stories of crimes committed against kids. Because she just alluded to the fact that she knows about 2 crimes that took place and she hasn't told anybody. It's very concerning. Very, very concerning.
Okay, so again, He's making this deceptive statement again that I've known for so long, probably, and how he's gonna find me and call the police. Okay, so this is manipulative, or it's an attempt at manipulation. It's also deceptive, clearly. So, I mean, he keeps doing this over and over and over again throughout the whole video, or frequently. He does it at the end again as well. It's also just a lie that he's concerned about me, in terms of safety with children. That's a lie. If he was actually concerned, he would just call them instead of making this video first. So there's that. All right, I'm going to do the next clip regarding the marketing information and the Modern Prophetic Symposium stuff that I'm going to talk about a little bit to clarify.
Well, Jeremy would have me do marketing, and he asked for me to ask, I would do marketing, and I'd be searching up people, and then I'd get their name and their email, and he had me look up people that were free to some of our conferences. We gave free registration for some of our conferences to students, of other ministries. She'd say, well, he'd make them register. He'd make them register. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because if they didn't pay to get in, you could get their email and their information and market to them later. We sell books, we sell courses, we sell other events. Why would you not get their information? People are like, well, it's shady if you're asking for information on free people that are coming in. You're like, not if you have a brain. I'm running marketing for a ministry. Of course you want everyone's information. That's a no-brainer. And then Wesley would bring up situations and stuff like, at the Dallas event, we did a Dallas symposium. I think it had something like 20 speakers or some crazy number. It was a big event. She's like, it was empty and I couldn't figure out why it was empty. And, it's just this conspiracy of talk. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to Wesley. She's, she's just running her own thing and maybe doesn't understand the dynamics of how it all works. But
okay, so this is correct that we were using email addresses from all of any event that we put on the event registry, whether it was free or not. We were pulling email addresses, and we were sending out marketing emails and fundraising emails and so on and so forth. That's accurate. The particular story that I share in my video, I do share about the marketing list and all of that and how we were marketing to people. One of the main things I touch on in my video is the Dallas Symposium and how I was reaching out to Lifestyle Christianity because we couldn't fill a venue. We were giving free tickets away to students, and how I had compiled this spreadsheet outside of an actual ticketing registration. It was a spreadsheet. And they were all texting me individually, and I was inputting their names and their phone numbers and their email addresses manually. And then when they would come in to the event, we would look them up on the list, and then I would mark that they were there. And then, of course, I had shared this list with Jeremy. He had access to it. And as far as I know, he and I were the only ones that had access to it. I don't know that there was anybody else that had access to it. So yes, we were using emails for marketing. That doesn't explain why we needed to be marking off the names as the people were entering into the event. That was strange. I also think it's a fair assumption at this point that, I would assume that these lists for all of these events were not only being used for marketing, based on what we understand and what we know now. So then the question becomes, how is Sean obtaining these lists? I don't know how he's getting them. There's also other events that had nothing to do with bowls that he would speak at, other conferences from other people. And that reference that Mike makes to the woman who's talking about the slaughterhouse, or when he's referencing the Slaughterhouse Road or whatever it is, and you can tell he's falsifying it. He's found it online. How did he get her information? How did he get her information, or how did he get anybody's information at Azusa Now? That's another question we need to ask. There was 80,000 people at that event, and that event had a registry. These are all questions that we need to ask. These are important questions. This next piece of information is interesting that he shares, and I was able to find out more information that I want to comment on as well regarding what he's speaking of. So watch this clip.
But, the Dallas Symposium was single-handedly paid for by one donor. And So it was paid for. This was a big event. And it was somewhat, I think, last minute in terms of putting it together. 90 days, we had 90 days to put it together. And we did registration, ticketed event stuff. We tried to fill it up as much as we can, but it was a huge venue, and we didn't have like a year to market it.
So he's responding to this section of my video where I talk about sponsors. Now, he says there was one sponsor. Apparently there was. I found out from an inside financial person that there was one sponsor. I don't know if it was a business or an individual. And all of a sudden, apparently in 2019, we got this massive amount of money. I'm not going to tell you how much, but it was a huge amount of money to cover this entire event. And according to this person, we spent the entire amount of that money on this event. And it was a huge event. And there were many, many speakers there. And like I said, we couldn't fill it up. He's talking about how we didn't have time to market it. I mean, maybe that's true. I don't know. But we were letting all of these people in for free. Now we're going to get into his statements in response to what I share regarding the food that was, we didn't have enough food for the volunteers. Bearing that in mind, I want you to remember that there was a massive amount of money that was donated, huge amount of money that was donated. And the honorariums, I actually know how much everybody was getting. I actually found a spreadsheet from years ago. And the bigger the name, the bigger the amount of money. And it is a lot of money. Like, for example, like Chris Volaton, his honorarium was very significant. And he spoke for like 2 hours for one day. Then you have Bob and Lauren Hassan. Their honorarium was quite significant. Lauren and Katie Towell, Brian and Katie Towell, their honorarium was quite significant. So we're just spending just a massive amount of money paying these speakers. Huge amount of money. And the venue, I'm sure, was extraordinarily expensive. It's a huge venue. So it's just really interesting. So listen to what he says. This next statement is intentionally deceptive because it omits specific information. It's also really inappropriate what he brings up. So I'm going to play that for you.
For the next one. Well, Wesley complains in her video about how there wasn't enough food, and how, she was worried about food and how she wanted to go buy food by herself. Well, Wesley has always had problematic relationship with food. She has an addictive personality, and she's had 2 emergency gastro bypass surgeries, and she's got an addictive personality, and so one of her vices is food, and it was always food. So she'd go into a room, you'd have 10 people, and you have 20 sandwiches, and she'd be like, "I need to get more food," and it's like, it's fine, but to make it seem like I'm not feeding people at a conference.
Okay, let's unpack this for a minute. There's a lot going on right in this statement. Some of it is intentionally deceptive. Some of it's inaccurate. I don't think he's meaning for the inaccuracies to be deceptive. I think he's just confused. And it's also a HIPAA violation, which is a problem. It's also a really inappropriate thing to include in this because that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about my past medical information when we're uncovering stuff that we, did while working for Sean. So, yeah, so there's a lot there. So anyway, so he's saying, Wesley says there's not enough food. So in my video, I'm talking about how there's not enough food for the volunteers specifically. And it really wouldn't have impacted me either way, whether or not there was enough food for the volunteers, because I wasn't eating from the volunteer food. I had access to the green room. So there's that. Now there was one, since the internet needs to know this, there was one, it wasn't, was not the gastric bypass surgery like he claims. It was gastric sleeve surgery, one of them. It was not an emergency. Those are planned and scheduled, and they're very hard to put through insurance, actually. So that was very, very much, that was a planned procedure. And I did share that information with him on a work trip. So it's super inappropriate that he's bringing this up on the internet, and also illegal. But for those of you who don't know how gastric sleeve surgery works, it actually makes you not hungry. So I was eating very little food during this time. If I ever had time to go down there and eat, I remember like running back upstairs with my plate. I was drinking a lot of coffee, so I'm going to give him that one. Just drinking a lot of coffee. Okay. But I'm referencing volunteer food, and there was not enough food for the volunteers. There wasn't like, and we were ordering like Chick-fil-A and stuff for them. You know, that in the green room, there was all of this really nice food for these people that we were paying like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to come and speak. So yeah, I mean, I think this is it kind of like, in light of all of the things that we're learning regarding all the allegations surrounding Sean and the ministry and the things that are coming out, I think this information matters. I mean, I think that, I mean, if you're going to give a huge amount of money to this conference to put it on and invite all these people in, I mean, I don't know. If I was giving that kind of money, I would want to know this. I would want to know that they could at least have enough Chick-fil-A for the volunteers. It was really disrespectful how we treated the volunteers. I mean, not the way I personally treated them, but it was disrespectful that we had them in the hallway next to the exit with nowhere to sit and a table with not enough Chick-fil-A on it. They were there running the whole event with us. We would not have been able to accomplish this event without them. And clearly people, you know, the fancy people made money off of this event. So there's that. So yeah, I mean, like, there's clear corruption here. There is, or at least it appears that there is. I don't understand why we are putting pastors on this big pedestal to where they need to be paid thousands of dollars and they have to have all this fancy food. And then the volunteers need to be eating in the hallway and they don't have enough food. So anyway, I've got plenty of witnesses for this too. I was not the only staff member that was upset about this by any means. I was not. So there's that. All right, let's look at the next clip regarding money that was left at Angela's temple. I talk about that in my video. And I'm going to add a clarifying statement. All right, so let's look at this one.
One time I asked her to go get a bag of product money from a conference, Angela's temple, that we did. Well, I was running everything. I was doing the host schedule, running the green room, running the conference registrations, product tables, you know, everything, the ministry teams, you know, all that stuff. I'm in charge of all of it. And supposedly, according to what she said, which, you know, we ran like hundreds of events. So she said there was a product bag that was left and I had her go get it. Well, this is down the street from where the office was. And a lot of times the events would go until like 10 or 11 at night, you know. Somebody left a product bag or whatever, and I had her go get it. And then she returned it to me and she says, and Jeremy says, keep this a secret between us, you know. And she's adding all these little details, like he's walking his dog and we're handing the bag. And she made it seem like it was some secret mission, you know, and I don't want to, you know, tell anybody. You're like, the product is going to get reconciled based on the digital sales with the cash transactions, the checks, the credit cards, everything, the next day or the next business day when we're in. Sometimes I'd hang on to the cash bags over the weekend.
Okay, so that's correct. It would all be reconciled. So I actually took this clip out of my original video because I mixed up the Imagine conference with the Modern Prophetic conference, and it was actually the Modern Prophetic conference at Angela's temple. They had both of those events at the same place. But I do tell a story about when he asked me to go and get the money bag that was left in Angela's temple. I was not telling the story insinuating that, not my intention to insinuate at all that Jeremy was taking money from the cash bag. That's not at all what I think was happening. I don't think he was taking any money from the cash bag, and he would carry cash. If we were traveling, he would carry all of the cash. Somebody had to carry it. You know, Sean wasn't going to carry it. Sean was just like doing whatever Sean was doing. And so, no, I don't think Jeremy was taking money from the cash bag. The entire point of that story was to talk about the first usage of the language just between us. This just between us language is used ongoing with Jeremy and I on different occasions. And I have multiple witnesses that have testified that this is language that was used with them. So I'm trying to point out like this kind of culture of like hiddenness. Things are being hidden. They're intentionally hidden. Okay. In this video, he's talking about somebody left the money. Jeremy was in charge of the money. He just was. He was the one that was going to get the cash bag. He was that person. So I don't know what he's talking about. Somebody left the money. He left it there. It was a mistake. It was an accident. He leave it there on purpose, right? I wasn't saying he, was doing something malicious. It was an accident. Okay. But he left it there. All right. He doesn't, in the video, doesn't deny or affirm whether or not this happened, but I do have witnesses. For everything I'm sharing with you, I have somebody that can testify. Okay? I'm not just like sharing random stuff with you that I'm pulling out of my brain. I'm sharing things with you that are factual and that I can back up with witness statements and all kinds of other things, actually. All right. So he also states, hang on, I'm going to pull this other clip. He says something that you should, yeah, we're going to listen to this one. Give me 1 second.
I'm not aware of any mishandling of money at Bulls Ministries in terms of the cash transactions and the donations. So that insinuation is gross.
All right. So I spoke to this person that had access to the finances. I spoke to them in recent days. And they disclosed to me that Jeremy had access to all of the finances. He was able to see everything. And that I also, I already figured that was the case because he was in all of the financial meetings. He was frequently upstairs in the accounting office. He was the COO. He was the chief operating officer. So I don't know how he would not have known the financial information. And this person says that money was being moved over from the Bulls ministry account into the iCreate account. And they were borrowing it, is the term that she used, like a loan. So I reached out to an accounting person that I know, who, manages nonprofit finances for a living. And I said, hey, can you do that? And they let me know that you can, if you have board approval, you can move money over. But if you don't have board approval, you cannot move money over, right? So I asked this inside financial person if they had board approval, and this person says no. So, and apparently this was happening whenever they ran out of iCreate money. Allegedly, they were moving money over from Bulls, which would be the donations, right? The money that people are giving. And I looked up some of the 990s from the past, and there's a huge amount of donations coming in. Depending on the year, anywhere between like approximately 500,000 to over $1 million of donations. So it's a lot of donations. But this person was saying, if we're not making money from the events, then they're pulling money and they're putting it in from the Bulls ministry account into the iCreate account. So he's stating he's not aware of any mishandling of donations. But that's not what this person is saying. And it was also my understanding when I was there that Jeremy had access to all of the financial records. I don't know if he had bank access. I don't know if he had that, but I know he could see everything based on what I was told when I was there and based on this person's statement. Okay. So I believe that this statement is deceptive. So regarding finances and problematic behavior with finances, I have spoken to 9 people total that have indicated that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, Jeremy has been involved in some way with finances, with things that should not have been happening. And I'm not going to share all the details of all of those allegations, but I have 9 witnesses. So, a lot of people don't want to be on the internet, but if we needed people to testify, we have a lot of people. Okay, so I'm going to share this next statement, which I believe is deceptive.
Because she needed help, the money. Her ministry wasn't paying the bills. And I could have hired anybody to do that admin work. But she was close, and she'd been hanging out around, Sean and Bulls Ministries for a while. So, I had her do stuff like that.
So I don't believe this is true. When he called me in late 2018, he was desperate for help. That's why he called me, because he needed help. Because, the assistant, who we know now was being sexually harassed, had quit, and they had fired others, and he needed help. That's why he hired me. That's why he brought me in. And initially I wasn't going to stay. I was making better money babysitting than I was at Bulls. I was making very little money. I did end up staying because I liked the job. At least for a period of time, I liked it. Now, this next part I'm going to get into, this is where it's like where we really get into the more heavy duty deceptive stuff. We're going to talk about the lawsuits, and he responds to a lot of the statements I make regarding the lawsuits. And there's just a lot of omission of information, and there's just some straight up lies. So we're going to go over it.
Clips of some of my videos, whatever fits the narrative, right? She clips a little, like 10 seconds or 5 seconds of what I'm saying, and then, tries to spin it. So at the end of my time with Bowles, it was contentious. I mentioned all this in my first video. I could tell it was time to go. Sean, sure, we're creating more and more narratives. Sean would tell me stories about how former employees had dirt on me, and they were questioning how I was treating them, and he was building this thing. And then these accusations came, and these accusations came from Wesley's best friends, or two of Wesley's best friends. And I was doing a lot of stuff then. I was working with other ministries, helping them out. I was consulting. I did a lot of consulting work. People would call me. I do marketing. I do email stuff. I had a company that did social media campaigns, and because I was good at it. So I worked with a lot of people. And there was a guy named Jack. He wanted help with his social media and podcasts and stuff. So I got hired to help him with that. Launched social media, and then getting into doing research and podcasts and stuff. And I ended up doing research for him, and then I did reach outs through admin stuff. And everybody that was in my life, we all did life together, And Wesley brings up two people, two of her best friends, and in her video, and they gave money to this person.
All right, so they gave money to this person. He names Jack, and then he says this person. They gave money to this person. We're gonna talk about that in a minute, and I'm gonna bring in the other witness statement that I have, because I have a whole different person now that's come forward with the exact same story. Who is not my best friend. I just met this person. Now, in my video, I state that these are friends. It's not a big secret that these are friends. One of them was working with us. They were, brought onto the team by Jeremy. And it was also one of Jeremy's best friends. This person was with us all the time. We spent tons of time with this person and Jeremy and Jeremy's wife. Jeremy was very close with this person, which is why this person trusted Jeremy. And it's why this person walked to Chase Bank with Jeremy during the lunch break and wired money with Jeremy to Harvest Capital, $100,000. Jack wasn't there when that happened, but Jeremy was there. And mind you, Jeremy is also employing this person. This is this person's boss. So, I mean, they're sharing what all of these other people are sharing, that they are approached by Jeremy, that Jeremy lets them know Jack and I are buying a hotel. Same story. The sad thing is this employee did not have a contract initially because, again, Jeremy is like a brother. This person just wires the money with Jeremy at Chase Bank, which is right down the street from Sean's house. In fact, I'm going to show you where it is. I'm just going to show you on like a little map. Okay, so look, there it is. I've crossed out Sean's address. Look, it's an 11-minute walk. We made this walk all the time. All of us together, or several of us together. We would go over to those shopping centers over there and we would have lunch together all the time. It's right there. Easy, super, super easy walk to Chase Bank.
The money didn't come back to them. And so they ended up pursuing me because I was the only person that was present. I was the only one around. They couldn't find this person. They had accusations, and they filed lawsuits against me. Started with one. One person that first filed was getting paid by Sean the entire time they were filing a lawsuit against me.
Okay, so again, he's trying to pin it solely on Jack. Jack was involved. This happened with Jack. It was Jeremy and Jack under Harvest Capital. And it talks about, or he talks about how he's doing admin and social media. So, I mean, maybe he was doing that too. That was not all he was doing. All three witnesses, again, are stating that he is the one that is soliciting the investments. He is the one that they are communicating with. He is the one that is assisting them in the wiring of the money. Okay. So this statement again is deceptive. Now they're talking about the employee suing them. I didn't even know he was referencing this in his first video when he talks about 3 lawsuits, because that employee didn't feel that they could pursue a lawsuit with Jeremy, because when they asked for a contract finally after the money was not coming back a year and a half in, they were given a contract. But Jeremy's name was not on the contract, obviously intentionally. And so they didn't feel like they could pursue Jeremy. They pursued Jack and won. And Jack gave them a tiny little fraction of the money back, and now he hasn't paid them anything. So they did settle on a large number, but this person has not been paid back. And this person not pursuing Jeremy in the lawsuit is not this person saying they don't believe that Jeremy was procuring the money. It's them saying they didn't feel like they had, at the time, they felt like there was really nothing else that they could do, because they were not able to get Jeremy to give them a document with his name on it. Now, this person did reach out to Sean and Cherie, like I say in my first video. Like he says in his video, they reached out to Sean and Cherie with these accusations. I have read that email. I was provided that email. But, of course, now we know that, those leaders were, at least Sean for sure was, corrupted. So I don't know who else you would go to. As long as I've known Jeremy, he was not involved in a local church to my knowledge. I'm not aware of any church community that he was participating in. And I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him in years. I don't know who he is under at this point, if anybody. Because like I said, as long as I knew him, he was not underneath anybody apart from Sean. So I just figured that Sean was checking on him. Right? Because I assumed that Sean was a good guy. And that he had some kind of accountability structure or some kind of way to make sure Jeremy was getting fed or something, fed spiritually. Jeremy speaks very highly of Bill. He spoke very highly of Bill when I was there. He spoke very highly of Bill publicly recently. I don't know that it would be beneficial to go to Bill, knowing what we know now. The person first wrote a good faith letter trying to get the money back from Jeremy and Jack and Harvest Capital. That didn't work. So that was kind of how that went down with this particular incident. So again, I didn't even know he was referencing this because, like I said, this person wasn't able to pursue, or felt at the time they weren't able to pursue a lawsuit with Jeremy. And apparently they did, sign something that say that civilly they can't pursue it. And regardless of lawsuits, I mean, this person is testifying that this happened. There are other corroborating witnesses that have the exact same story. There are documents where Jeremy is listed as being a part of Harvest Capital. There are emails, there are messages, and apparently there's footage from Chase Bank that I'm sure we could dig up, or that could be subpoenaed if it needed to be. So, I believe this victim. I believe that these things happened to them. And so, I mean, this is YouTube, right? We're not in a courtroom. We're in the court of public opinion. So I am letting you know that this happened to an employee, and that their inheritance was supposed to go into this investment, that the property was not purchased, that it was not put into escrow, and that they do not know where the $100,000 went. And I have 2 other witnesses that have the exact same story. Also, he's stating here that this person is suing him while they're being paid by Sean. Well, they were employed by Sean. So yes, they're being paid by Sean because they're working. So I don't know how that has anything to do with how they should not be permitted to pursue the $100,000 back that they wired with Jeremy at Chase Bank to Harvest Capital. That has nothing to do with it at all. Okay, so I'm going to show you another clip again where he, is basically saying he's not a part of this.
And anybody and everybody that may have been involved, even worked for, been around, been a friend of, they'll just put you in that lawsuit. And you're like, well, why would anybody do that? You're like, it happens every day. They even put companies and people in these lawsuits that I've never heard of. I have no association with. So what they do is it's like a spaghetti on the wall thing. They literally just will try to ping as many people or many things because they looking for the lawyers looking for money. How can we get?
Okay, so again, this is not what witnesses are saying. I mean, he's saying, you know, essentially they just threw me into it because I was working with these people, or I was working for Sean, or I worked, you know, whatever. Again, he's denying that he was a part of it. There are just so many people that, you know, could testify otherwise.
But that's settled. It's done. Then the second one comes in and tries to get a quick judgment, you know, files it to a fake address and all these things and tries to just get a judgment on me. And I go and I defend myself, and then they try again and they start it over. They didn't like the discovery, and then they started over. And, you know, I'm having to spend money on a lawyer every single month. I'm sending a check to a lawyer, you know, to defend myself. And they're doing every which way they possibly can to try to see if they can get a judgment against me. And that one ended because they terminated it. And then there was a third one. And
so that is very deceptive. All right. So I present a ton of evidence in the first video, not all of the evidence that I have, but in the first video about that secondary lawsuit. Now that person is the only person that had a contract, and that was my friend and her husband. They have a contract, and it is an investment. They also have, you know, they have a paper trail. They have a paper trail that other victims didn't have. It's a very, very strong, compelling paper trail that was going to make the lawsuit successful, 100%. That was what their attorney was saying, is like, this is a very, very simple case. So I don't know what he's talking about, false address. It was filed. I was looking at the addresses, and it's filed under what Harvest Capital is listed as. So I don't know what he's talking about with false addresses. But, you know, this was ongoing. Obviously they were going back and forth, you know, and it was going to go to a jury trial. So, because there was a contract, and because it was solid, and because there's a paper trail, you know, he purchased a property in Florida, or I don't know if this is why he purchased the property, but he filed bankruptcy out of Florida. And again, this is an investment. Okay. Now it hasn't been invested. The money has not been put, this $90,000 has not been put into a property, and at all. It just isn't in a property. No property has been purchased. And, you know, the money is just, we don't know where the money is. So of course, I mean, she's, you know, and her husband are filing a lawsuit. So I'm going to show you the bankruptcy paperwork. I mean, I have had to take massive portions out of this paperwork. Bankruptcy filings are public, just so you're aware. For his personal privacy, I've had to omit massive portions of this paperwork. But this is the section where he lists the investment. And I want you to look at how he lists it. So here you can see the $90,000 is listed. And then down below, it's specified, you know, to identify what the money is, or what the debt is. And he's listing it specifically as a loan. That's what he's stating in the document. Now, I know nothing about investments. I know nothing about this kind of business. I am not a lawyer. You know, I'm not a judge, but I do pay taxes. And I know that the federal government typically wants you to be accurate when you file something with them. They value accuracy. Now, this person and her husband, you know, obviously we can't get on the internet, and, you know, she can't share all these things that she has in writing. But they have told me that what they have would, you know, stand up in a courtroom. What they have is solid. So again, I'm not just getting on the internet and sharing this information willy-nilly. Like, there's documentation, there's paperwork, there's paper trails, those emails, there's text messages, there's other witnesses. that were in the room when these things were discussed. Like, there is just a lot there. Okay. So I feel like you guys should know this. It's just important. I mean, if you're going to bring somebody into your church to speak, you just might want to know this.
Random text messages and random little emails that were given to her by her best friends. She fails to mention that they're already resolved legally speaking, and there's nothing that I've been, found guilty of. I've been released of all claims. I've been, I was tried before, multiple, years of having to defend myself, and released of all claims. So the very reason I was forced to quit Bulls Ministries, one of the.
Okay, so this is a partial truth. This is a partial lie. So I went back and checked with that employee. And like I said prior, apparently they did decide that because Jeremy's name was not on the contract, they were not going to attempt to pursue it. That doesn't mean that they're saying these things didn't happen. Okay, but apparently there was something signed where they're not going to pursue it civilly. Okay. Now the other stuff, I don't know what he's talking about in terms of being released, because that is not a thing. On the other person's lawsuit, I looked, and it can be refiled at any time. And there's nothing that they have signed saying that they, are no longer going to pursue anything. And also, we're only talking about civil court. And I haven't said anywhere in my videos that Jeremy has been found legally guilty of anything. I have not said that. This is YouTube. So I'm warning you about testimonies I have from witnesses that I believe that people need to know for, their financial safety. So there you go.
I was largely unaware of whether or not there's anything else out there. And so I also filed.
Okay, so he's talking about how he doesn't know if there's any other claims out there against him, and how he filed something so that there can't be lawsuits. I don't even know how that works or if that's a thing. But like I said, I have another victim. He would be aware that there might be other lawsuits. So I don't, this whole statement, I didn't think there was anything. I wasn't aware of anything else out there. All right. Let's look at this next statement.
I don't want to take anything from anybody. Never did. I've always given. I've always tried to give more than asked. Even for like Wesley, I gave her hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of my free time. Even though I was charging for consulting, I'd give her like my time to help her.
Okay, another deception, I believe, because I have people saying that he did take things from them, or he took money from them. And then he's talking about hundreds and hundreds of hours where he's consulting with me. I don't know what he's talking about. There was a time where there were a few formal meetings, so maybe equating to 10 to 20 hours. We were friends. So we would spend hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, we traveled together, Jeremy and his wife and I, and our friends and all of us. The employee that's, that I was just talking about, we all traveled together. And so, in standing in lines at Disneyland and at restaurants and on airplanes, we had all kinds of conversations about all kinds of things. Like I said, he was like a brother. He was very, very dear to me. So I would talk to him about all kinds of things, including ministry. And definitely he would share things about like how to fundraise or all kinds of stuff like that. That was not formal consulting. And I still don't think, even if you added it all together, probably wouldn't be hundreds of hours. Maybe if he's talking about also like talking about friend stuff, like, hey, this is going on in my family. But I don't know what he means by hundreds of hours of consulting, but it makes it sound like, essentially, sadly, I think this is what we're all coming to the realization of, is that the friendship appears to be transactional, to where, it just wasn't real. So it's very disheartening. Let's go on to the next thing.
And she makes this insinuation about me, asking her to do a shady, potentially illegal deal. She said, I was consulting her with the ministry, and we were talking about how could she grow, and there's this idea where you can have a nonprofit and then have a retreat center and do like ministry events, and you could rent it out, so it could be like a profit source for the ministry rather than just solely receiving donations. You could actually have like an income stream. So then you replace your salary, you're able to take care of your ministry, and you don't have to rely on monthly donations.
All right, there is so much going on in here that is deceptive. Okay, so first of all, this conversation did not happen in a consulting setting. It happened over the phone on lunch break during the pandemic. And I referenced this in my video. How it happened, when it happened, that Jack and he are going to purchase a hotel as an investment property. Can we put it through your nonprofit? We'll give your nonprofit $30,000. So he's trying to frame it in a way where it's like going to be like for the nonprofit. That's not it. Okay. It also appears that this is the same thing that's tied to all of the investments, because while this is, this phone call is happening around 2020, these other people are being approached, right? They're testifying that they, they're sharing that they've been approached for this money that's going to go into a hotel with Jack and Jeremy. So then my question would be to Jeremy is where this money that you're going to purchase this hotel with, because you're asking me if we can, put the purchase of this hotel through the nonprofit. Where is that money coming from? Because my ministry didn't have it. We didn't have any money to buy property, tiny little nonprofit. So where's it coming from? I mean, that's a really valid question. And, if you're saying you're not involved in all of these other situations where Jack is investing money or is taking money from people and it's not being invested in a hotel, and you're approaching me saying Jack and I are going to buy a hotel as an investment property, can we put the purchase? Do you see what I'm saying? Like it doesn't, what he's saying doesn't make sense. And it also, this was an out-of-state hotel. I don't remember the exact location, but it was not in California. And I was running a children's ministry in Los Angeles. So I don't know what he's talking about, how there could be a retreat center. It has nothing to do with the mission of my nonprofit. We're an evangelism and discipleship organization. So there's so much going on here. It's just so much deception. And according to an accountant and to the accountant supervisor, I checked, what he was suggesting was illegal. So we did not do it. So I'm going to show you some emails and text messages from this other victim that's come forward. This victim has just recently contacted me. I've spoken to them extensively. They were approached by Jeremy in 2020. And they state that Jeremy went to lunch with them to propose this, investment deal with this person, and that Jack was on the phone. They brought Jack on the phone during this lunch meeting. And at first this person declined, and then, they prayed about it. They changed their mind. They decided to invest. And, the money was never put into escrow, was never put into a building as it was, told to them it would be. And the money has not been returned to them. According to this person, Jack has sent this person, very small increments of money here and there, like $50, $100. And they communicated with Jeremy back and forth a little bit during the early stages, as it was becoming more and more evident that, the money was not being used the way that it was supposed to be used. And then after that, Jeremy was no longer responding to anything that this person said. This person also stated that they commented on Jeremy's video, basically saying, hey, can I have my money back? And Jeremy deleted it. So, yeah, there's a lot of comments. There's a lot of people telling me that he's deleting their comments. There's just stuff disappearing off those videos like crazy. So I'm going to show you this email that this person got from Jeremy. This was an email that was received following their lunch meeting regarding the investment. Okay, so Jeremy is writing to this person. He says, great connecting with you today. Here is an email that Jack and I put together. Please let me know if you have any questions. And then essentially, it's this very long email about the investment and the properties and the money and how much is needed and how much the return is, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the next part of it. I'm not going to read all of it. It's long. And I'm going to show you the next part. Okay, there's that part. You guys can pause it and you can read it if you want to. Just gives all the details of the investment. And there's the end of it. I crossed out Jeremy's phone number at the end. And they attached a document for this person to look at regarding the investment. This person also sent me quite a few text messages. And the text messages are helpful because I have Jeremy inputted in a name. I can just see the phone number on the top. I've crossed it out, obviously. But I was able to just go into my own phone and look, and it's the same phone number that I have for Jeremy. I'm not going to read through every single one of these. This person's inquiring about the investment. They have questions. Jeremy is going back and forth with this person. So, again, this person wants, to check on how things are going, maybe even get the money back. This one, actually, let's look at this one first. September 1st. Hey, Jeremy, I hope you're doing well. I know we mentioned September 1st as the date. You and Jack were hoping to have this last venture wrapped up. I haven't heard anything from you guys, so I'm assuming that it's not happening. Yeah, so Jeremy, is saying like, well, Jack and I are, he's kind of indicating they're moving forward. And then if we look at this one, they still haven't invested it. So this person just really wants their money back at this point. I need to back out Jeremy. They're saying, how can we get that process? How can we get that process of getting my investment back? We're in a situation where we need the cash, like right now. So, I mean, Jeremy is, kind of going back and forth with this person. They keep referencing, like, well, let's talk to Jack. Let's talk to Jack. Let's talk to Jack. And that's what all the other victims are saying is, everything is kind of being like directed towards Jack. And trying to say like that, Jeremy doesn't have anything to do with this. It has to do with Jack. And then this person, reaches out throughout the years to Jeremy to try to get some kind of a response. So this person's messaging Jeremy consistently throughout the years, trying to get a hold of them. And the last text message, you can see that they are, stating they saw Jeremy's video. So there's that. I mean, they also have tons and tons of text messages from Jack. The reason I'm not show all of that is because apparently Jack is not denying that he's a part of this. Apparently he has said, that this is it. He's not saying he didn't partake in this. He hasn't paid people back. Apparently he's given this person, $50 here and there. But I'm showing evidence about Jeremy because Jeremy's, saying he has nothing to do with it. So I'm showing you evidence that, obviously just displaying that he had a lot to do with it. Okay, let's go through the rest of the video and find some more deceptive statements. I'm not going to cover all of them. This video is just going to end up being too long, but let me hit on some of them.
She thought I was in China. You're like, okay, really, Wesley? You thought I was in China? You thought I was hanging out in Wuhan during COVID, even though the flights, it was against the law to fly there. The airspace was shut down. You think I'm going to go hang out in China? Really?
Okay, so this is deceptive because this conversation did not happen during the shutdown. It happened in 2021 when the world was open. So this is a text message I got from him immediately following a phone call that I got from China. It was not Wuhan, China. But it wouldn't have mattered because this was in August of 2021. So not during the shutdown. And he's asking me if I'm working. I said, I didn't get a missed call from you. And then I asked him when he did get on the phone with me through the Google Voice number, did you call me from China? And he laughed very uncomfortably. So here's this.
We weren't allowed to come back to the office. So we worked remotely. And she also alludes to me traveling. Like, yeah, I started a YouTube channel a year and a half after I left, started posting videos of my travel because I was working for myself, writing books for myself. I love travel. You're like, yeah, Wesley, we told you multiple times that I was going to be visiting family because California was nuts. I couldn't even get my haircut in California. And so I went to Arizona to get my haircut during COVID. And she's like, oh, well, this was shady. He was doing shady stuff and he was being elusive. You're like, for real, Wesley?
Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if he's like completely forgetting the time frame or if he's saying things incorrectly on purpose. But I talk about in my video about how they leave their Beverly Hills apartment and they start traveling. We don't really know where they are. It's hard to get a hold of them. He starts using Google Voice numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So he's saying he started a YouTube channel a year and a half after he left. That would have been much later than he started the YouTube channel. The first video that's currently on the channel is from January 5th, 2021. He was still at Bulls during that time. And then he's referencing like the shutdown, like I'm talking about things that are happening during the shutdown. So they didn't leave Beverly Hills. They didn't leave LA until spring of 2021. So the world was open. The world was wide open. So this is just not accurate information that he's sharing here. And again, I'm not saying that people can't travel and work remotely. I don't know what his arrangement was with Sean. I know that he didn't want us to tell them that they had not renewed their lease. I knew that there was like some secrecy in it, and that, you know, we just really didn't know where they were. So my point in sharing the story is that like, there's just a lot of secrecy involved. There's a lot of things that are not being shared on purpose. And, you know, that's strange. So I'm not going to clip everything because there's a few other points I need to hit, and I do need to clip that stuff. So he goes on to talk about how I'm responding to his video to victim shame him. That's one of the things he states. So victim shaming is, I don't know if anybody, there's got to be people that are educated out there that understand what victim shaming is. I state in my video that I believe what happened to him. We all believe him. We don't doubt those things happened to him. But victim shaming would be like me trying to throw that back in his face, or saying, well, what were you wearing when that was happening with Sean? Or like, did you, do something to invite that? Or like, no, I think that, those were unsolicited things that Sean did to him. Allegedly, I believe them though. And I think that it's horrible that happened to him. I'm sharing information that has nothing to do with what happened to Jeremy. I'm sharing additional information that the public should know. So there's that. So, and then he says, I made the video in response to his victim statement. Made the video because he publicly put out a video about how he was victimized by Sean, and how he was aware since the very beginning that Sean was a pervert, and that Sean was a danger, and that Sean is a predator. And he stayed, and not only did he stay, but in Jeremy's own words, he, promoted and built everything for Sean. So then in around 30-minute mark, he says, I'm not a victim of Sean or me, Wesley's not a victim of Sean, and she's not a victim of me. Okay, look, anybody that was involved with the entire ministry, but anybody that read Sean's books, anybody that went to one of his conferences, certainly the people that work for him that were oblivious, we're all victims of Sean, right? Out of all the people that are culpable, Sean is clearly the most culpable, right? And then he says, you were not a victim of me. Well, listen, I mean, we all, everybody that I've spoken to that worked underneath Jeremy, we all feel victimized by Jeremy, because Jeremy hid this from us. And he says this later in the video, and he apologizes. And I'm certainly not going to stand before God and withhold forgiveness from Jeremy. So I forgive Jeremy. I, in faith, daily am forgiving Jeremy, right? Lord, help me continually release Jeremy to you. This is a hard thing. It's a hard thing. But forgive so that you may be forgiven, and the Lord forgives us. So how dare we withhold forgiveness from another? Whether or not, I believe there's genuine repentance, I'm not sure. I know that there's other things clearly that are being hidden. So I don't believe that there's full repentance. But yes, I am a victim of Sean, and I am a victim of Jeremy, in the sense that I was there participating in events while Sean was preying on people. And obviously Sean knew he was preying on people, and Jeremy knew Sean was preying on people. So yes, I am a victim of these things. And certainly not of any of the inappropriate things that have been mentioned. That never happened to me. And somebody asked me in my comments, they were like, well, are you saying that Jeremy is predatory? And I want to clarify that point. No, I do not believe that Jeremy has I have no reason to believe that Jeremy poses a physical or sexual danger to anybody at all. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he knew that Sean posed a danger and he covered it, and he also promoted Sean. That's what I'm saying. Okay. For clarification's sake. I feel like that's important to say. Now, in this next clip, he's throwing shade at these amazing men of God that are exposing all of these things. So I'm going to show you that clip. I feel like it's not a good idea to do that.
The first people to respond to Wesley's video are those that are looking for an internal bias to prove whatever narrative they want to prove with their social media accounts, with their YouTube channels. It was sad to see Mike Winger jump on to Wesley's video right away. Blaze and Christina Foray and Jesse from Faith Reframed, right away, they posted on her video. And I'm not saying that, you know, they were ultimately doing something wrong, but because they've done a lot of good. I think they've exposed some things. I think they have helped in some areas. But the fact that they never challenged her on any of it, they never said, hey, by the way, you should reach out to Jeremy and talk to him about these details before you go and try to, you know, drum up a narrative. They never challenged her on any of it. They're just looking for the next greatest story, the next little video they can make. And some of it's true, you know, in terms of, you know, what Mike Winger, you know, has done. I'm not wanting to ultimately poo-poo on all their stuff, but there's a reason why they haven't had me on their programs, because I'm trying to be balanced. I'm not just trying to destroy the church or tear everything down, you know. I'm not trying to, you know, deconstruct everything. So it was sad to see that. It was sad to see.
Wow. Okay. So did he just accuse Mike and Blaze and Jesse of trying to tear down the church? Is that what he just said? Okay. Can we all just agree that these men of God that are coming forward and spending their time and effort and risking a bunch of stuff, and, you know, can we just agree that they're doing the work of the Lord? Because we wouldn't even be having this conversation without what they're doing. I mean, Mike has essentially begun the unraveling of so much truth. So for Jeremy to get on here and say that they are trying to tear down, that is a wild statement to me. Now, in light of that statement where he's accusing them of wanting to tear it all down or bring it all down or whatever, I want to show you this clip from this video where I clipped the thing he says about little ones. This is by far the wildest videos that he's put out. So here's this.
Light it all on fire. And then our purified selves will show up. We'll be more perfect. This is what I'm asking for. For those that deserve the wrath of God, may it be so. They are punishable unto God. They are punishable. In this case, no one's unpunishable. Bring it down. Bring the judgment. Let it rain. Let it rain. I'm so stoked. I'm so excited. I'm going to write books on this stuff. You know, people ask me, okay, so how are you, you know, healing? How are you praying for, you know, those that have oppressed you? And I said, I'm turning them over to Satan. That's what the Bible says. So many cases. Somebody else can pray for their soul. I'm turning them over to Satan. Let their flesh be destroyed so their spirit might be saved another day, but somebody else can pray for them. I'm turning them over to Satan. That's exactly what the Bible says. See, there's two sides to this coin. We can't just blindly accept theology that rejects the full weight and power of God.
All right, so I don't disagree with him that we can't reject that theology. There's just a lot going on here. And one of the first things that I noticed, and many of us noticed when we watched this video, like I said, this is the most bizarre video he's put out. I'm shocked that it's still on the internet. But one of the first things we noticed was that he is prophesying against Sean, Cherie, and Jen and Hona, and whoever else he knows about, if I don't know. But he's also prophesying against himself very effectively, clearly. So there's that. Yeah, this stuff is wild. I don't even know how. I feel like I'm in a movie. I think I'm like living in a movie. He goes on to talk about, what he believes is my motivation for releasing the video. My motivation is to protect the church. He says it's to help friends. This is YouTube, so it's just getting the information out there, guys. This is not a courtroom. He also states around the 37-minute mark that he believed that Sean's evil behavior was just with him. I don't believe that. I don't, or he thought that it was only going to happen with him. Jeremy's really smart. I just don't believe that he's that naive when it comes to predatory behavior. I don't believe that. And then he says, if you're on a stage, you're not sexually sinning against people, right? So the first time that a pastor exposes himself to somebody, approaches somebody sexually, there's so many different things that make this even worse, right? Sean is married, and Jeremy is a man, and he was under Jeremy was under Sean's spiritual authority. He was also an employee, which makes it illegal. There's a lot there, right? So just one time is disqualifying. He's disqualified from ministry. So no, he can't be on the stage. He can't be behind the pulpit. Jeremy knows the scriptures. He knows what the Bible says. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the next thing where he says he's shared what he knows, everything that he's already shared everything that he knows.
Wesley makes an insinuation in her video, as I mentioned, that I may know other things and I'm hiding it. That insinuation is a lie. I've shared what I know, and I'm sure you went through all of your emails and your text messages and you sat down and you schemed to try to see if you can spin up a narrative, to make me look bad. Whatever, I don't care. It's fine. But don't come on a public platform and accuse people of hiding crimes, Wesley. See, everything I say, I have receipts for. There's confrontations that took place. I know how long Sean was on the Justice Group board. Much long after these accusations came out. I know of accusations that were presented to Expression 58 that were turned down by Cherie's best friend, who before she got married. I know many others. I have receipts. And if you think I'm done, I'm just getting started. Because Jesus didn't just come to plant flowers.
He's saying he shared everything that he knows. He says, I shared everything that I know. And then he says this, he alludes to these other things that he knows. And then he says, if you think I'm done, I'm just getting started. So am I crazy, or is he saying he has additional information that he's going to share? That's essentially what I'm hearing him say. Now, this next screenshot, this next comment is really interesting to me regarding Sean Foyt. I do recall Jeremy referencing something about Sean Foyt in the office, and he didn't like him. He didn't like Sean Foyt. And I didn't know that Foyt was on the board. I didn't know anything about the board. I never, had anything to do with that. But I remember he didn't like him. And then I saw this comment, which I thought was really interesting. So this person's referencing Sean Foyt. Obviously, if you're following this stuff, then you know that Foyt is being sued again. There's, been multiple complaints about him and all kinds of different stuff that's been covered about Foyt. And Jeremy responds says, Sean F. Day is coming soon. He can't hide. And yeah, so then Jeremy was on the Laura Lynn Tyler show. I'm going to show you a clip of that. She asks Jeremy about Sean Foyt, actually. And they're talking about board meetings and how there were board meetings held in the casinos, and Sean Foyt was frequently traveling with Sean, and she wants some insight from Jeremy about Foyt. So I'm just going to play a small clip. He calls Foyt slimy, but he doesn't want to share a lot more information. So just take a look at this real quick.
Sean Foyt's been Sean's friend for a long time. And I'm not sure their current friendship status. You know, everybody's questioned, you know, Sean's friendship status right now, but Sean Foyt would probably know the most about Sean. And I would believe, I can't prove this on my, you know, with, you know, photos, shots or screenshots or whatever, you know, recordings or whatever. But the interactions were Sean Foyt would, you know, do the casino board meetings with Sean, and they would entertain the same style of locker room talk and, you know, bachelor style, you know, ministry. You know, Sean Foyt, I just felt like he was a slimy individual. And, you know, he participated in you know, weird relationship style with Sean, and maybe participatory, I don't know. And then when, you know, you ask him for accountability, you ask him for clarification, he slimes away, you know, he slips away and he distances himself, you know, he tries to say, I wasn't involved. I'm not involved in any of that. And it's just slimy, you know. I think that's kind of all I'll say with Sean Foyt at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have said that maybe like you saw some things? You might be trying to be very careful because maybe, you know, you don't want to get sued, but actually eyewitness accounts of things are not something that, you know, people, if it happened, it happened. And this is the truth telling that's going on.
Sure.
You're saying that you witnessed Sean Foyt awkward. You call it awkward. Are you able to give any example?
No, I think I'll just leave it at that. At this point, there are a lot of things in motion. There are things that are being discussed and worked on, you know, that are bigger than me, and
Yeah.
I don't want to hinder any of that.
So I 100% understand if there's other litigation going on or something like that. He doesn't want to mess up the evidence or, you know, trials or whatever's going on with Sean Foyt. So I get that. My point is that he's recalling things that he saw that sound like they're inappropriate. I mean, he calls them slimy, saying Sean says, I'm not a part of that. Just different things that he's aware of. So just to display a few more deceptive statements in the comments. Now, a lot of people are wondering who this person is. Okay. And Jeremy has commented that he thinks it's me, this lover of God person. This is somebody that Jeremy and I both know. We both know this person very well. This is somebody that doesn't want to be public, but this was somebody that was on the inside. And this is a statement he's responding to them. He says, hi, mysterious person. I have a legal doc from every party mentioned in this video stating that I am dismissed forever from being sued about this forever. According to the law, I am cleared. Okay, so this is just a lie. I know for a fact that the person, my friend and her husband have not provided such a document to him, and that this case can be reopened again at any time. So this is a lie. He references how the first employee, he references another lawsuit and how he says that's the first employee, or that's the third lawsuit he was referencing in his video, but that employee also has no idea what that means. They're saying that's not, there was no secondary attempt. So we're not sure what he's talking about there either. Let me show you again another screenshot. Okay, so this person, talking about the document that the first employee signed where they decided not to include Jeremy on the lawsuit. Jeremy says Wesley has that. Wesley has them. She pulled them. She just doesn't want to share that. I was released from the suits with those documents. It's all filed. Okay, so he's referencing being released from multiple lawsuits. So I don't have these documents. I don't have them. Maybe he thinks I have them. But again, this is a partial lie, which is, yeah, it's just a lot of lying. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Okay, so then he's responding to this person as well. I worked with Harvest for a bit and was cleared of any wrongdoing. She did not want to share that fact. Okay. So again, I don't know what he's talking about with being cleared of any wrongdoing. I mean, in the sense, perhaps he means in the sense of there has not been a lawsuit where there's been a judgment against him and there has not as of yet been any criminal proceedings. Perhaps that's what he means. But all of the people involved would tell you that they stand by their story. Also, I spoke about this a little bit in my prior video, but there's also a different employee that was approached. This person and their spouse were approached to invest, and Jeremy sent them a document. It was from Jeremy at harvestcapital.org. That's where the document came from. I looked. They shared a screen recording with me and some different images, as well as the proposal. And again, this is all the same. It's all the same story. Investment with Jack and Jeremy in Harvest Capital, real estate investment. So they have the same story. This person and their spouse decided not to invest, but they were approached. Again, this is somebody who's working for Jeremy, right? Underneath his underneath authority. So it's just, you know, I don't know what the laws are, honestly, about approaching employees about this kind of thing. I don't know if there's rules against that. I mean, it's definitely unethical and inappropriate. I don't believe that he went into this deal with Jack thinking that it wouldn't work. I do think he thought it would work. Like he said, he put his own money into it. All of the witnesses that I have said that he had told them that he had put his own money into it. He also told them all that there was a specific relative that had also put money into it. And I'm not going to say which relative that is, but it was the same named relative for all the witnesses. So I do think he thought it would work. I don't think that his intention was for it not to work and for the money to just never go back. I think that something went wrong along the way. So I want to put that out there. You know, that's entirely possible that there was some deception on Jack's part. And it's entirely possible that they both thought it would work and it just didn't work. And then they got in over their heads and some kind of decisions were made that shouldn't have been made. And now the money's gone. And again, we have no idea where this money is because it didn't go into a property. It just didn't. It's gone. So there's just a lot of people that have been hurt by this, really, really, really hurt. And it's a heartbreaking situation. You know, people that were close with him gave money and trusted him. So yeah, I have questions. And things are only defamatory if they're false.
Heart and their chest and their face should burn with the fear of God. Do not harm this little one. The sin of omission. When you know about sin and you refuse to confront it.
We love our partners and we love the people that create moments and opportunities like today.
That was after the contention of, you know, I pushed back on the finances.
And I want to pray for you, and I want you to pray with me.
They spend $100,000 $200,000 on eating out, Uber Eats every year, if not more. They'd go on personal trips, with the ministry. They'd find every way to spend money through the ministry without actually taking his income because they broke the rules 1 or 2 years.
The specific things that God's placed on your heart, maybe he's placed a need.
I'm not aware of any mishandling of money at Bulls Ministries in terms of the cash transactions and the donations. So that insinuation is gross.
Maybe there's a desire, a burning desire to grow in the prophetic, to start activating your words of knowledge, to do prophetic evangelism, to bring wholeness and health to your body. Maybe you've got a specific burning desire in your heart tonight.
The ministry, and it was a personal piggy bank for them. They'd write contracts to companies and move money, and it was just a big game. And I was, trying to let them be responsible, but at some point, it started to not only inhibit my growth, but inhibit the growth of the ministry.
And I want to pray with you right now as we begin to take the offering. I want to pray that specific prayer is answered for you. That God would come and bring breakthrough in your life, and he would come and bring you the transfer of anointing for that prophetic gift that you're so hungry for.
Sean bragged about going to naked hot tub parties in Kansas City.
And I want to extend with an open hand an invitation for you to partner with Sean and Cherie, the Bulls Ministries team.
Locker room stuff, very crude jokes, sexual jokes, crude humor, sometimes racist.
And I feel very strongly that Sean is one of those laborers that goes into the harvest and brings forth the fruit for us to see what's possible. Amen? He's going above and beyond where most people have gone before, and he's pioneering a way.
And he knew how to manipulate people. I'm not just saying that flippantly, but he really truly studied people, and how to win people over and how to motivate them and coerce them.
And we thank you, God, for the abundance of who you are, and we ask for you to return this investment of prayer and financial investment, God, 100-fold in our life.
So everything that Jeremy has released has prompted these questions, and prompted the response where, all of these other victims have come forward to share about the financial abuse and what has happened to them and how their money has been taken and not given back to them. That's what prompted that. Now, if Jack wants to get on the internet and make a video and start denying all these things, then we'll respond to him too. But so far, Jeremy's the only one that has got onto a public platform and said, or misrepresented this financial situation.
I guess a former friend of Sean's was borrowing money from a lot of people, including myself, and wasn't giving it back. And I got piled in, with all the accusations. And I said, I'm innocent. This has nothing to do with me. The truth came out. And, they were just looking for a way to get rid of me.
I saw somebody in his comments say, I don't believe any of them. And, I can't blame them. I can't blame people for not believing any of us. I mean, because they were like, well, these people were working for Sean, and how could they not know? And I just think they're all lying. So look, this is the thing. Even if you don't like me as a human being, even if you think I should have gone to Jeremy first, I don't believe I should have for a variety of reasons. But even if you think, I'm doing the wrong thing, or even if you just don't like me, you just think I'm obnoxious or whatever it is, look at the evidence that I have presented to you. And bear in mind that there are receipts and there are witnesses, many, 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 many witnesses that have a very, very different story all of their stories match. They have a very different story than what Jeremy is saying to you. Now, as I've been talking to witnesses, especially people that, that worked with Jeremy and I, that traveled with Jeremy and I, that, did life together with Jeremy and his wife and I and the rest of us, we are genuinely contending and praying for Jeremy. And we are genuinely praying for that. that we see some repentance, that we see some healing for what he's gone through. We just, this whole situation is really painful. I would ask that you pray as well for him, and also for Jen and Hona and for Sean and for everybody involved, that there would be a genuine repentance and that there would be a genuine restoration to Jesus for, things that have happened that should not have happened. That's genuinely our desire. That's what we want to see. A lot of people are asking, like, well, who do I trust? Who do I trust? And in this whole situation, even just beyond the stuff with Sean, just in all these other churches and all these other ministries, who do I trust? Scripture says you're going to know them by their fruit. You got to test the fruit. Everybody who's coming on here and talking, and you got to look at the fruit of their life to see whether or not they're really walking with the Lord and they're doing what the Lord wants them to do. So don't test by gifting. Don't test by intellect. Don't test by the size of the church. Don't test by the appearance of the success of the ministry. Don't test by, how well somebody can write a book. Don't test by somebody's words. Test by the fruit. That's how you're going to know. All right, let's pray, and then I'm going to be done with this very long video that's much longer than I intended it to be. Jesus, come and help this entire situation. Please come and help every single person involved. Please come bring everything into order. You are a God of order, not of chaos. And so, Lord, we ask for both your justice and your mercy. We ask, Lord, for hearts to be turned to you. We ask for people to recover all that has been lost. We ask for everybody who's been hurt to be healed. We ask for people that have been hurt and then hurt others to be healed as well, God, for every single person involved, to be healed, to be restored. We pray, God, that you would use this very, very, very painful, really horrible situation, God, and that you would use it for your good. And we know that in the midst of all that's going on in the church, you are purifying the church. We ask that you would purify our own hearts, God, so that we could be found blameless before you, Lord Jesus, that you would prepare us for your return, and that you would restore the gospel as being the focal point of everything that we are doing in the local churches. Help it to be about you, God, not about us, not about money, not about personal gain, not about the favor of people or social media platforms or book endorsements. Just let it be about you, Jesus. Bring the bride back into alignment with just bringing Jesus glory. That's what we need to be doing. So come, Lord, and do what only you can do, and redeem and restore and heal, and help us with this entire situation. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for watching.